My mother punched my pregnant wife at a baby shower, then told everyone to let her float. Hi, I'm Aaron, 29, and the moment my own mother's fist slammed into my pregnant wife's belly, I realized the family I'd spent my whole life defending had finally crossed a line I could never uncross. Yeah. That's how this begins. No warm childhood memories, no gentle build-up. Just violence, panic, and the sound of my wife screaming as she stumbled backward into the pool while 7 months pregnant with our son. I remember the exact second everything snapped. We were at my twin sister's baby shower, my sister Emma. She and my wife, Lena, were due within 3 weeks of each other. Same month, same excitement, same swollen ankles and late-night cravings. I used to joke that my brotherhood with our unborn sons already meant double the diapers and half the sleep. But then my mother, the woman who gave birth to me, walked over with that look she always reserved for me. Like she was approaching an employee she planned to fire. "Aaron," she snapped, loud enough for half the guests to hear. "We need to talk about your baby fund." My stomach dropped. I knew that tone. I knew the entitlement hiding behind it. And I knew whatever she wanted, it wasn't going to be reasonable. She jabbed a finger at my wife, my exhausted, glowing, excited wife, and said, "Give your sister the $15,000 you two saved. She needs it more. Her husband has been laid off. You and Lena can get by. Emma deserves support." That word, deserves, hit me like a punch. Because growing up, my sister always deserved more. The bigger room. The newer clothes. The attention. The praise. The unconditional affection. Meanwhile, I got responsibility, expectations, and lectures about being the boy who had to carry more weight. But this time she wasn't just asking for my comfort. She wanted my unborn son's future. "No," I said, steady but firm. "That money is for our baby. For his care. His medical bills. His future. I'm not discussing it." My mother's face twisted with a fury I'd only seen when she was tearing into me for some imagined resentment against Emma. "You selfish little bastard," she hissed. "After everything we've done for you." Lena stepped closer, protective instinct flaring. "Please stop. We're not giving away our child's security." My mother rounded on her like a wolf. And before I could move, she pulled her arm back and punched my wife. Full force. Right in the belly. Lena gasped, a sound I'll hear in nightmares for years, stumbled 3 steps, slipped unspilled lemonade, and fell backward into the pool. Her scream dissolved into a choking splash. For a second I froze. My brain refused to accept what my eyes saw. Then I lunged toward the pool, but someone grabbed my arm. My father. "Let her float," he said coldly. "Maybe this will teach her, and you, to stop being so damn selfish." And then? My twin sister laughed. "Relax," Emma said, sipping her mocktail. "Maybe now they'll finally learn to share." Nobody moved. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not my aunts, uncles, cousins, or the 30 guests who stood there as my unconscious, pregnant wife drifted face up in the water, blood blooming faintly beneath the surface. And I, restrained by the man who was supposed to protect me, could only watch. That was the moment I stopped being a son and became something else entirely. When I finally broke free and dragged Lena from the water, her eyes were closed. Her skin was blue. And her belly, our son, looked wrong. I remember screaming for help. I remember my hands shaking so violently I could barely perform CPR while screaming her name. And I remember the sirens. The rest? A blur of hospital lights, police questions, medical jargon, rage, terror, and the indescribable agony of seeing my wife wheeled into emergency surgery while I stood there dripping wet and shaking with a fury I didn't know a human could survive. What I do remember clearly, painfully, is this. The doctors said if she had been under 5 minutes longer, she would have died. Our son would have died. Both almost died because my family didn't think we deserved $15,000. I thought the worst was over. I didn't know yet that this was only the beginning. I didn't know the legal war ahead would destroy my parents, bankrupt my sister, and burn every remaining bridge between us to ash. All I knew was this. I would make them pay for what they did. And I would never, ever, let my son grow up thinking monsters like them were family. When I reached the hospital, I was soaked, shaking, bleeding from my palms where my nails had dug in, and so furious I was vibrating. But nothing, compared to seeing Lena wheeled away from me, unconscious, her belly distorted in a way no father should ever have to see. "Sir, you need to let us take her," a nurse told me, prying my hands off the gurney. "My son," I choked out. "Is he? Please, just tell me." "We're doing everything we can," she said. "But you need to breathe." Breathe. Right. I couldn't breathe. My lungs were full of pool water and terror. Then someone grabbed my arm, not to restrain, but steady. My best friend, Marcus. He'd arrived so fast he hadn't even changed from his mechanic overalls. He just looked at me, took in my trembling, and said, "I'm here. I'm not leaving." That sentence. God. It snapped something in me. Because my own parents had left me in the moment I needed them most. But Marcus? He ran. I collapsed into the chair. He kept pressure on the gash on my arm as I told him everything in fractured, half-sobbed pieces. His face went from shock to disgust to a kind of murderous calm I had never seen on him. "They tried to kill her," he said quietly. "They tried to kill your kid. You know that, right?" I did. But hearing it, spoken aloud, it turned my stomach cold. Hours passed. Police came. EMTs came. Doctors came. Then finally, a surgeon walked into the waiting room. His face was serious, but not hopeless. "Aaron Patterson?" Yes, that's me. "Your wife is stable," he said. "Your son is stable, though early. She suffered a severe placental abruption. Your quick CPR helped. If she'd been underwater any longer, we would be having a very different conversation." I nearly fell to my knees. "And my wife?" "She awake soon. She's asking for you." They led me into the ICU first. Lena lay there pale, bruised, IVs in both arms, hair still damp, lips cracked, but alive. When her eyes fluttered open and saw me, she whispered a single word. "Baby?" I choked on relief. "He's okay. He's tiny, but he's okay." Her shoulders sagged, and tears leaked from her eyes. Then she whispered the next sentence that shattered what was left of me. "Why did they do this? What did we do wrong?" I held her hand. Tight. Like if I let go, she'd disappear. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "They did." I didn't know yet how deep the consequences would cut. But I knew one thing. We weren't letting this go. Ever. When Lena fell asleep again, I stepped into the hallway, where 2 police officers were waiting. "Mr. Patterson," one said, "we need a full statement. Multiple witnesses already confirmed your account, and we've received video footage. What your family did." She shook her head. "We're treating it as a felony assault." "Felony assault? Against my mother? My father? My twin sister?" I thought I'd feel conflicted. I didn't. I felt clarity, sharp, cold, and righteous as steel. The police took my statement. Every ugly detail. Every cruel word my parents said. Every second they watched my wife unconscious in water while laughing. By the time I finished, the officer closed her notebook and said, "We'll be making arrests." Later that night, after the adrenaline crash hit me like a freight train, I slipped into the NICU. My son, our son, lay swaddled in wires and blankets, tiny as a doll, fighting harder than any human his size ever should have to. I put my hand in the incubator. His fingers wrapped mine. Barely. But it was enough. Right then I promised him this. "You will never know people like them. You will never be hurt by them. I will protect you, even if I have to burn down the whole damn family tree." And I meant it. The next morning the detectives returned with an update I wasn't expecting. "Mr. Patterson, we need you to see something." They showed me the footage. The video Rachel, the yoga instructor, had recorded. My family standing there. My sister laughing. My mother saying, "She deserves this." My father saying, "Let her float." My parents' friends sipping punch in the background. And Lena's body drifting in the pool. Unmoving. That video would soon blow up the internet. But in that moment, I threw up. Right there in the hallway. The rage was so intense it physically poisoned me. When I finished retching, the detective handed me water and said, "We're charging them with felony assault, reckless endangerment, and obstruction of emergency assistance. Possibly attempted manslaughter." I nodded. And for the first time since the baby shower, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because justice had officially begun. And this is the part where everything detonates. The legal system got involved. The internet got involved. And my family, the people who didn't lift a finger while my unconscious, pregnant wife floated in a pool, finally faced a mirror big enough to reflect the monster looking back at them. But before any of that, there was the moment everything truly turned. The moment I realized this wasn't just a crime. It was a line in the sand. A before and after in my life. It started with a knock on my hospital room door. I thought it was a nurse. Instead, it was two detectives, and behind them, my mother in handcuffs. My mother. Handcuffed. Wearing the same dress she'd worn at the baby shower, now wrinkled, mascara streaked, hair matted, eyes wide like she couldn't believe she was living in the consequence of her own actions. The detective spoke first. "Mr. Patterson, we've just executed 3 arrests. Your mother, father, and sister are now in custody for felony assault, reckless endangerment, and interfering with emergency medical assistance." My mother lurched forward like she wanted to come inside. "Aaron, tell them," she cried. "Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. Tell them I would never hurt your wife on purpose." "Ma'am," the officer snapped. "This is not the place." "No," she insisted, eyes wild. "He knows what really happened. He knows I." She turned to me. "Aaron, tell them! Tell them your wife provoked." And that was it. That was the moment something inside me calcified. I stepped forward, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, cold as the metal holding her wrists, "You punched my pregnant wife. You called her selfish. You told people to let her drown. You watched her almost die. There's no misunderstanding." She blinked, stunned, like she'd expected me to defend her. Because I always had. Because it was the pattern of my entire childhood. She explodes. I fix. She insults. I swallow. She hurts. I forgive. But not this time. Not anymore. "Mom," I said, voice steady and sharp. "You made your choices. Now you live with them." She opened her mouth again, but the detective pulled her back. That's when my father stepped around the corner, also handcuffed, face red with a mixture of rage and panic. He lunged toward me before the officers shoved him back. "You're doing this?" he snarled. "To family? You ungrateful piece of—" I didn't flinch. "Family doesn't leave my wife to drown," I said. He actually scoffed. "She was faking it. Emma said she always exaggerates pain." He said it like that explained everything. Like nearly drowning in a placental abruption were theatrics. Then Emma appeared, escorted by a second officer. Tears streamed down her face, but I knew those tears. I'd seen them 1,000 times growing up. Not guilt. Not remorse. Self-pity. "Aaron," she sobbed, "you're ruining our lives." I stared at her. At the sister I once defended from bullies, the girl I'd shared birthdays and secrets with, the person I thought would always have my back. "You laughed," I said quietly, while Lena floated unconscious. "You laughed." She opened her mouth, but no words came. There was nothing to say. The detectives led them away in 3 different directions because apparently my mother tried to claw my father's arm, screaming that he should have stopped me from talking to the police. Drama until the end. Minutes later, when the hallway finally cleared, I walked back into Lena's ICU room. She was awake. Pale, exhausted, stitched, bruised, but alive. She saw my face. "What happened?" I kissed her forehead. "Justice," I whispered. "Justice has started." But the turning point wasn't the arrests. It wasn't the charges. It wasn't even the video going viral or the internet hunting down every guest who stood there and did nothing. It was what came next. Because that night my son crashed. His tiny heart rate dropped. Nurses rushed in, alarms blaring, monitors flashing like strobes. I froze, paralyzed by the trauma of almost losing him already. Lena cried out for him, but she was too weak to move. A doctor turned to me and said something that changed everything in my soul. "He is fighting, but he's fragile. Any more trauma, any more stress, and he won't survive. We need peace around him. He needs stability." Peace. Stability. 2 things my family had never provided. In that single moment, the truth hit me like another gut punch. My son's survival required me to cut out toxicity like cancer. For good. Not just charges. Not just lawsuits. Not just boundaries. Severance. Complete, permanent severance. That was the turning point. Not the violence. Not the arrest. It was standing over my son's incubator, watching his tiny chest rise and fall with effort, and realizing he deserved a better world than mine. And I would burn every bridge to give it to him. That night I told Lena, when we leave this hospital, we're never going back to them. Ever. I'm done being their son. She squeezed my hand and whispered, good. They don't deserve you. That was the moment I stopped being afraid of the fallout. Because the only thing that mattered now? Protecting my family. My real family. And I was about to go to war. And if you thought things were already explosive, this is where the blast radius widens. By the time my mother, father, and sister were processed at the station, the video Rachel recorded had already leaked. I didn't know it yet, but the world was about to see exactly what kind of monsters my family really was. Meanwhile, Lena lay sleeping in her hospital bed, a dozen tubes running from her arms, bruises blossoming beneath her gown. And our son, our tiny fighter, remained in the NICU, fighting for every breath with a strength no baby should need. I was standing between their rooms, stretching my back, when my phone buzzed. It was Marcus. His text said, "Dude, turn on the news. Now." I walked into the family waiting room, grabbed the remote, and flipped to a major network. And there it was. Footage of Lena floating unconscious, blood mixing with pool water. My father's voice. Let her float there. My sister's laugh. My mother walking away. A full segment. A panel. Experts giving commentary about bystander apathy, familial abuse, and a near homicidal level of neglect. It played in a loop. I didn't move for nearly a minute. Then I took out my phone and saw thousands of notifications. Messages. Missed calls. Mentions. Tags. Strangers demanding my family face prison time. Strangers offering support. Reporters leaving voicemails. Someone had dug up my parents' Facebook photos and plastered them across Twitter, calling them the poolside sociopaths. But it wasn't just strangers. People I hadn't spoken to in 10 years were texting me. Co-workers. Old teammates. College roommates. One text stood out. Aaron. I saw the video. I'm so sorry. Tell me Lena and the baby are okay. It was my aunt. My mother's sister. The one my mom cut off years ago. I didn't have the emotional energy to respond. Instead, I dragged myself back to Lena's bedside. She was awake again, eyes glazed with exhaustion. I heard, she whispered. The nurses were watching the TV. Your family, they actually did that. It wasn't just shock. They meant it. There was no denying it now. No minimizing. No heat of the moment excuse. No patching it over. They knew exactly what they were doing. And the world knew it too. I sat beside her. I'm going to protect you. And our son. Whatever it takes. She nodded, eyes glassy. I'm scared, Aaron. Me too, I admitted. But we're going to be okay. She squeezed my fingers weakly. Promise me they'll never come near our baby. It wasn't a request. It wasn't fear talking. It was instinct, the instinct of a mother whose child had already come within minutes of dying. I promise, I said. On everything I am. Not even 10 minutes later, a hospital social worker came in. A calm woman with a clipboard and soft eyes. Mr. Patterson, she said, because this case involves violence toward a pregnant woman, and because the baby is in critical care, we need to talk about safety planning. Protective orders. Security measures. It hit me then, hard, that the hospital was treating my parents as an active threat. Because they were. We filed an emergency protective order right there. Against my mother. My father. My sister. All three. The social worker looked at me and said, You're doing the right thing. I just want you to know that. 2 hours later, I got a call from a detective. Mr. Patterson, your parents are denying everything. But we found something. What? A group chat. A text thread. Your sister bragging that she'd put your wife in her place. Your father telling her not to worry because Lena is dramatic. And your mother saying, and I quote, we'll make him give us that money. One way or another. My blood ran cold. That wasn't rage. That was premeditation. Then the detective said something that hollowed out my ribs. They're trying to claim you fabricated this story to steal attention. But with this evidence, it's falling apart fast. I didn't answer. Because something inside me had shifted. All my life, I held on to this hope, A stupid, stubborn hope that deep down, my parents loved me. That someday they'd see me, value me, treat me like more than a resource. But this obliterated the illusion. That group chat told the truth my childhood only hinted at. They never saw me as family. Just leverage. Just labor. Just a tool. And now that I wouldn't hand over my baby's future, they tried to destroy mine. That night, as nurses adjusted Lena's 4 and my son's monitors beeped steadily, I realized something that burned through me like fire. I wasn't fighting for revenge. I was fighting to break the cycle. To make sure my newborn son never felt the way I had felt my entire life, small, unimportant, disposable. And to ensure the people who almost killed my family would never touch him again. The next morning, the story had reached national news. Then international. Reporters camped outside the hospital. Lawyers, dozens of them, emailed offering representation. Friends offered places to stay. Strangers sent donations for NICU costs. But the biggest shock? My sister's husband, Mark, showed up. Alone. Pale. Trembling. I had no idea, he said. I wasn't there. I'm so sorry. Aaron, what do you need from me? I'll testify. Anything. He looked broken. And I believed him. He hadn't been part of this. But he hadn't stopped my sister's spiral either. Just tell the truth, I said. He nodded. I will. I'm done covering for her. And that, oddly, was the moment I realized something. This wasn't just my family unraveling. This was the start of their empire of favoritism, bullying, and entitlement collapsing. Piece by piece. Brick by brick. Lie by lie. And I was done standing beneath the rubble. And this is where everything that had been simmering beneath the surface for decades finally boiled over. By the time Lena was stable enough to hold a conversation without drifting into pain-induced sleep, my phone had exploded with nearly 1,000 messages. But one stood out. A message from the detective. Mr. Patterson, we need you to come down to the station today. We've completed the interviews with all 30 baby shower guests. You're going to want to hear this. I didn't want to. But I had to. I kissed Lena's forehead, told her I loved her, and then went to the NICU. My son's tiny fingers curled weakly around mine. That grip, small as it was, kept me upright. Marcus drove me to the station. I think he was afraid I'd get behind the wheel and run someone over. When we arrived, the lead detective walked us into a briefing room and dropped a thick stack of printed statements onto the table. This, she said, is what your family's friends said. I braced myself. Because I knew, these people weren't just complicit. They'd always been the Greek chorus for my mother's favoritism. The aunts who whispered, Emma's the pretty one. The uncles who joked, Aaron's the workhorse. The neighbors who believed my mom's version of every family story. But even knowing all that, nothing prepared me for what I read. Because everyone, every single one of the 30 witnesses, blamed me. She antagonized her mother. She shouldn't have talked back. She knows her place in the family. Emma deserves the money. It wasn't an assault. It was a family disagreement. She fell into the pool on purpose to make her mother look bad. She exaggerates everything. She's always been dramatic. They're overreacting. And my favorite. Aaron always escalates things. He should control his woman better. I slammed my fist onto the table so hard the coffee cups rattled. Control? I snarled. Control? She's my wife. She almost died. The detective looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and fury. That, she said, tapping the stack of statements, is why none of these people can be considered credible witnesses. Then she held up a different piece of paper. But these people can. They were the statements from the strangers. 2 delivery guys, a neighbor walking her dog, a passerby out for a run, who saw the pool from outside the fence. All 3 said the same thing. She was punched. She was unconscious in the water. Her family laughed. No one moved to help her. And that was enough. But the detective wasn't done. And then, she said, there's the footage your friend Rachel provided. She played the video again. Not the version the news aired. The full one. The one with sound. I forced myself to watch it. I forced myself not to look away when my wife hit the water, arms flailing before her body went still. I forced myself to hear my sister laugh. Forced myself to listen to my father say, let her float. Forced myself to witness the complete indifference on the faces of people who claimed to love me. By the time the video ended, my throat was raw. Marcus's knuckles were white around the arm of his chair. The detective leaned forward. Mr. Patterson, based on evidence, we're adding 2 more charges against your mother and father, child endangerment and attempted fetal harm. The DA believes the intent, whether direct or implied, is clear. This case is strong. I swallowed hard. Then she added, there's something else. Your sister tried to file a counter-complaint. She claimed you assaulted her. Marcus actually laughed, a humorless, disbelieving bark. She said? The detective continued reading from her notes. My brother grabbed my arm violently. The video shows she brushed past you while laughing. That complaint has been dismissed. I sat back, hands shaking, numb. Because this wasn't just violence. This was a cover-up. A coordinated attempt to rewrite reality. A decades-long family dynamic reaching its final, ugly form. The detective looked me dead in the eye. You need to understand something, Mr. Patterson. Your family's priority is not reconciliation. It's self-preservation. They are going to spin, deny, and manipulate. You cannot engage with them. I don't plan to. She nodded. Good. Because we're taking this to court. The words court and family had never lived in the same sentence in my mind. But now they were married permanently. As Marcus and I walked out of the station, news cameras swarmed. Microphones shoved in my face. Someone yelled, Aaron, do you forgive your mother? I stopped walking, turned, looked directly into the nearest camera, and said, she almost killed my wife. She almost killed my son. Forgiveness isn't on the table. Marcus whispered, holy hell, man. That's gonna be everywhere. He wasn't wrong. By the time I got back to the hospital, my phone was blowing up again. But this time? Not with hate. With support. Thousands of strangers telling me, protect your family. Cut the toxicity out. We're with you. She doesn't deserve forgiveness. And then, an email from someone I never expected. A civil attorney, specializing in family assault cases. She wrote, I saw the footage. You have grounds for a lawsuit. A very, very strong one. And it doesn't just cover medical bills. It covers punitive damages. Punitive. As in punishment. As in consequences. The kind my family had never faced. The kind they were about to choke on. Because if holding them criminally accountable was justice, then the civil suit? That was going to be payback. Not for me. Not even for Lena. But for my son. The one person in this world who would never suffer under the Patterson family legacy. Not on my watch. And this is where the scorched earth portion of the story begins. Up to now, everything had been reactive, responding to violence, responding to trauma, responding to the aftermath of monsters finally showing their teeth. This is where I went on the offensive. Like I told the detective, I wasn't interested in forgiveness. Or family therapy. Or sitting across some table while my mother fake cried and my father blamed stress, and my sister played the victim like it was her Olympic event. I wanted accountability. Concrete. Legal. Permanent. The baby fund they tried to steal from me? It was about to look like pocket change compared to what was coming. Lena was recovering slowly. My son's vitals were stabilizing. His heart rate had evened out overnight, still delicate, but less terrifying. And for the first time in days, the doctors cautiously used the word hope. That little word made something dangerous ignite inside me. Hope wasn't enough. We needed justice. We needed security. We needed the kind of distance from my family that no apology could ever cross. So when the civil attorney, Lauren Foster, walked into our hospital room the next morning in a navy suit and a stack of organized files, I was ready. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson, she said, sliding her glasses up. First, I'm glad you're both alive. Lena gave a fragile smile. I offered a handshake that was probably too firm. Lauren continued. I reviewed the footage. The witness statements. The medical reports. The group chat the police forwarded. This is one of the clearest, strongest civil cases I've ever seen. She tapped the folder. You're not just entitled to compensation. You're entitled to punitive damages so significant they will feel this for the rest of their lives. Lena whispered. What does that mean? Lauren answered without flinching. It means we don't just ask for money to cover medical bills. We ask for punishment so severe it financially devastates them. Because they attempted to devastate you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. For 29 years, my parents punished me in subtle ways. Favoritism. Control. Manipulation. And I always took it. Not anymore. Lauren continued flipping pages. We're suing your mother for physical assault, assault on a pregnant woman, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and prenatal endangerment. She flipped another. We're suing your father for obstruction of emergency care, reckless endangerment, and contributing to fetal harm. And your sister, Emma, for negligence, complicity, verbal encouragement of violence, and obstruction. Lena whispered. Oh my God! I whispered. Good. Lauren nodded. We're asking for $2 million in damages. Lena nearly fainted. 2 mil, what? It's justified. Lauren said. Your premature birth costs alone are in the hundreds of thousands. But more importantly, punitive damages need to hurt. She paused. Your mother wanted $15,000. She might lose everything. My brain replayed my mother's voice. Give your sister the money. She deserves it. Stop being selfish. Let her float there. I met Lauren's eyes. Do it. Her smile was razor sharp. I already filed the paperwork. Now, meanwhile, my family? They were imploding. The news had gone global. Not viral, global. Mother punches pregnant woman over baby's shower money. Family watches daughter-in-law drown. Bystanders do nothing as woman floats in pool. Reporters camped outside the jail. My parents' names trended online. Their employers were contacted. Their neighbors were interviewed. Old friends started distancing themselves faster than rats fleeing a burning ship. Then the consequences hit. Hard. My mother, an elementary school teacher, was fired. Effective immediately. The school board issued a public statement. We cannot employ someone who shows such violent disregard for human life. My father, longtime financial consultant, lost 3 major clients in one morning. One simply wrote, We do not work with men who tell people to let their pregnant daughter drown. And Emma. Her employer suspended her. Apparently their company policy didn't align with laughing while your sister-in-law suffocates. It would have been funny if it wasn't so disgustingly deserved. But the worst hit wasn't even the arrests. It wasn't the job losses. It wasn't the lawsuits. It was the public humiliation. My mother, queen of appearances, ruler of PTA meetings, champion of neighborhood gossip, was now a viral villain. The world saw who she truly was. And she couldn't control the narrative. That, for her, was a punishment greater than prison. But of course, she tried reaching out. Oh, she tried. Voicemails? Emails? Blocked numbers? Begging? Threatening? Screaming? Promising? She left one voicemail screaming. You ruined me! All because your wife lied. Then another. You're my son! How could you do this to me? Then, please tell the police it was a misunderstanding. I'll apologize. Then finally, if we go down, you go down. I played that one on speaker for Lauren. She smirked. Great. That's witness tampering. I didn't delete a single voicemail. They were going to be evidence. Every word she said was another nail in her own coffin. But this story isn't just about consequences. It's about how consequences cascade. One act of cruelty, one punch, had set off a domino chain that turned a quiet suburban family into a national scandal. And next? Next came the civil hearing. The courtroom. The testimonies. The day I sat across from the people who raised me, not as a son, but as the man who was going to legally bankrupt them. And I wasn't afraid. Because at my back, holding my hand, was the only family I needed. My wife. My son. My future. I wasn't just fighting for justice. I was reclaiming my life. And now we're entering the courtroom, the part where truth stops being emotional and becomes legal weaponry. My son was finally stable enough that Lena could hold him for short periods. Watching her cradle his tiny body, for taped to his foot, monitor wires looped around his blanket, solidified everything. We weren't just fighting for justice. We were fighting for his future. So when the civil hearing date arrived, I walked into that courthouse with a suit that didn't quite fit, a folder of evidence, and the kind of resolve men get after nearly losing everything. Lena came too, still healing, still frail, but determined. Marcus walked in behind us like our personal security detail, shoulders squared, eyes scanning for threats. My family was already there. My mother looked older, hair unbrushed, eyes hollow, face washed out by fluorescent lights. But her expression wasn't remorse. It was resentment. She still believed I had done this to her. My father sat stiff, jaw-wrenching, avoiding my gaze entirely, too proud to look ashamed, too ashamed to look proud. Emma looked haggard, mascara smeared, hands shaking in her lap. No husband beside her, he'd already had enough. When they saw me? My mother's eyes filled with tears like she'd just spotted a long-lost puppy. "Aaron," she whispered. "Baby, please. Can we talk?" "No," I said and walked past. No theatrics. No hesitation. Just a boundary 29 years overdue. We took our seats. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with silver hair and the patience of a saint, began the proceedings. Lauren, my lawyer, stood first. "Your Honor, we are here because a pregnant woman was violently assaulted, left unconscious, and nearly drowned. Her unborn child nearly died as a result. And the defendants, the victim's in-laws, did nothing. In fact, they encouraged it." She placed the evidence on the table like she was dealing cards in a game she already won. Video footage. Witness statements. Medical reports. Group chats indicating premeditation. Voicemails showing a complete lack of remorse. Then she played the footage. In court. The video echoed through the room. Lena falling into the pool. Blood tinting the water. My father saying, "Let her float." Emma laughing. My mother turning away. I watched the judge's jaw clench. Then the room fell silent. My mother broke first. She started crying, not quiet, remorseful crying, but loud, gasping, dramatic sobbing like she'd just been handed a death sentence. The judge stared at her, expression flat as stone. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, "this courtroom deals in facts, not theatrics." My mother's sobbing stopped instantly. The judge continued. "We will now hear from the victim's husband." I stood. Adjusted my tie. Cleared my throat. "My wife almost died," I said. "My son almost died." The people sitting across from me watched it happen. They've done this kind of thing my whole life, belittling, gaslighting, favoring my sister, punishing me for existing. But this? This crossed every possible line. I will never feel safe near them again. And I will never allow my child to be near them. I paused. My family isn't losing me. They already lost me the moment they chose cruelty over compassion. Lena squeezed my hand. Lauren finished our side with precision sharp enough to cut marble. "We are requesting $1, $5 million in damages, plus punitive damages to ensure this crime is never minimized or repeated." Then it was their turn. Their lawyer, a sunken-eyed man who looked like he regretted accepting their case, stood up. "Your Honor, this was a tragic misunderstanding." The judge raised a brow. "Misunderstanding? Mrs. Patterson punched a pregnant woman." He swallowed. "My clients acted out of stress, not malice." The judge folded her hands. "And the encouragement to let her float? Was that stress?" He sputtered. "Emotions were high, Your Honor." "And the laughter?" Silence. My mother tried again. "We didn't realize she was unconscious." "If we knew." "Mrs. Patterson," the judge cut in sharply, "you watched your daughter-in-law floating motionless for minutes. Your behavior shows a shocking disregard for human life." Then Emma jumped in. Through tears, she choked out, "I didn't know. I didn't know she'd get hurt. Aaron always blames me for everything." The judge didn't flinch. "Miss Patterson, your laughter is recorded. Laughter is not confusion. Laughter is not shock. Laughter is cruelty." Emma sobbed harder. My father finally tried to speak. "I was misinformed. You witnessed the assault," the judge snapped. "You instructed others not to assist. That is obstruction of emergency care." My father closed his mouth. For once in his life, nothing he said could save him. The judge reviewed the evidence. Every single file. Then she spoke the words I'll never forget. "This is one of the most disturbing cases of familial violence I have ever seen." She turned to the defense table. "You have shown no accountability. No remorse. No concern for the victims. This is not a misunderstanding. This is abuse." Then she slammed her gavel. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiffs. Damages awarded, $1, $5 million." The room erupted. My mother gasped like she'd been stabbed. My father's face drained of color. Emma whimpered like a child. But Lauren wasn't finished. Your Honor, she said, we also request garnishment of wages, seizure of assets if payments are not met, and a no-contact order. Granted, the judge said. My family's lives had just collapsed. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. But the revenge? The consequences? They were only beginning. Because losing the lawsuit was just the first domino. Bankruptcy. Criminal sentencing. Public fallout. Destroyed reputations. All of it was coming. And I wasn't done protecting my family. Not even close. The civil judgment hit my family like a meteor. $1. 5 million. Plus wage garnishments. Plus asset liquidation. Plus a permanent no-contact order. I thought that would be the end of it. But I forgot something important. People who've spent their entire lives avoiding consequences don't go quietly. They thrash. They claw. They smear. They try to drag everyone down with them. And my family? They were Olympic-level professionals at self-victimization. My mom was fired the same day the judgment became public record. Not suspended. Not investigated. Fired. Her school district released a statement. We cannot employ an educator who demonstrates such disregard for human safety. That line stabbed her ego worse than any prison sentence. Because to my mother, reputation wasn't just important. It was everything. She tried to spin it, of course. She gave an interview to a local station saying, I didn't hit my daughter-in-law. She tripped. I'm the real victim here. My son twisted everything. The station didn't air that interview. But someone leaked the raw footage. And the internet tore her apart. Comments shredded her excuses like paper. People recognized her face from the viral pool video. The public had already made up its mind. There was no sympathy left for a woman who watched a pregnant woman drown and shrugged. My dad's career collapsed next. Financial consultants need trust. Turns out, telling EMTs to let her float doesn't inspire confidence. 3 major clients dropped him within 24 hours. His firm placed him on unpaid leave. Then, when his arrest records hit the news, they let him go entirely. He tried reaching out once, through a long, rambling email that Lauren immediately forwarded to the DA as a violation of the protective order. It said, and I quote, You've embarrassed this family. You've destroyed us. How can you do this to your own blood? I replied only with, You're not my family anymore. Blocked. A month later, Lena and I packed up our apartment and moved 2 states away, to a quiet neighborhood where no one knew our story, where our son could grow up without the shadow of my parents looming over him. We bought a small house. We painted the nursery ourselves. We promised each other we would never repeat the cycle. And then, just when we thought the storm was over, I received a letter. A letter forwarded from Oren, marked from the prison where my mother was now serving her sentence. 4 pages long. Handwritten. Begging. Manipulating. Crying. Blaming. Twisting. Pleading. I almost didn't read it. Until I saw the line that told me she hadn't changed at all. You still should have given your sister the money. None of this would have happened. I'd burned the letter in our backyard fire pit. Watched the words curl into ash. And walked back inside to my wife and child, the only family that mattered. But the final part? That's still coming. Because every story has an ending. And mine? Mine ends with peace. Real peace. The kind you earn.